Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another video. My name is Isaiah. I'm a licensed professional counselor, and today we are going to be engaging in a little bit of a thought experiment where I imagine if Tim Ferriter, the defendant in the boy in a box case, as it's being called now, were to walk into my office either willingly or being mandated for counseling as part of his sentencing procedure. Now, we did a previous video where I analyzed how I might approach the Ruby Franke case as we explored some of the facets of her case along with what was going on with Jodi Hildebrandt, her therapist and business partner and overall scary kind of person. So I invite you to dive with me as I talk through my thought process on if Tim Ferriter were to be assigned to me as a client, how I would approach his case, how I would have conversations with him, and what would be my thinking as we go through some of the details. Obviously now we know that he has been declared guilty and he's facing up to 40 years in prison as a sentence for the crimes that he committed. And so we're moving ahead with the assumption of these 30 to 40 years in prison, depending on which news source you look at, and go from there. So the first thing I would think of as I'm conceptualizing this case is that we probably don't need to hit on the parenting piece so much. Obviously, he made huge mistakes and terrible choices as a parent. The reason I wouldn't focus so much on the parenting piece, first of all, these things have already happened. While I'm obviously not condoning them, I also can't go back in time and change what he's done or would have done in those situations. Also, because of his sentence, we're assuming that he is in a controlled environment where he does not have access to the kids, and so safety isn't as much a concern in terms of that parent-child abuse that was going on previously. Some people might also disagree with me on this. I don't see any further purpose in making him feel more guilty. He has already been declared guilty, and I feel like it would be more productive to focus on, okay, so now that we're at this starting point, where do we go from here? And to be honest too, if he were to serve those 30 to 40 years, even if he gets out early, there's a pretty high likelihood that by the time he's released, he doesn't have kids in the house. And focusing on parenting skills, while that might feel necessary given the circumstances of the case, realistically, those parenting skills may not serve him all that well based on the current situation. What I would say in terms of parenting though, is that we could put some focus and some time on how we navigate those relationships. In theory, there might be some space for his kids to visit him while he is in prison, and navigating those conversations, navigating those relationships, now that all of this has been kind of aired out in public, for him to be able to perhaps seek reconciliation, to be able to talk to his kids about what happened and the stories that are being told either about their family or about him, that could be a productive point of conversation that we could have if that's something that he's interested in pursuing. How does he navigate the realities of the current situation of him being incarcerated, potentially still seeking a relationship with his kids? Again, depending on what the rules are about him receiving visits and whether the kids want to visit him, all of that I don't know. But yeah, that would be part of a larger conversation of how do we navigate what your identity is now, and especially now that there have been so many different opinion pieces about Tim Ferriter as a person, there could be a lot of pieces for him to pick up in terms of just who he is now, how he sees himself, how other people see him, and part of that is his relationship with his family, such as it is. And so in all of this, while those might be my initial thoughts and concerns, of course, just like with the Ruby Franke case, there are two things to consider in addition to what my impressions are. First, did the judge say anything? If this is mandated counseling, did the judge say anything about what we need to be focusing on? Second piece would be what Tim Ferriter would want to focus on. That's part of my practice, to be able to say, okay, yes, you have autonomy in this space to be able to determine what you want to focus on. And if it is something that's unrelated to the case or unrelated to family stuff, by all means, let's make the use of what you are willing to bring into counseling. And while I think you can make the argument that some of the stuff related to the criminal charges are much higher on the priority list, if he is not ready to tackle that stuff yet, I do him a disservice and I practice unethically by forcing him to focus on that stuff. That gets a little tricky when it comes to mandated counseling, and there might be specific areas of focus that might be prescribed for him and for me. If he were to walk into my office willingly, I would be doing a disservice to him if I forced him to focus on something that he wasn't ready to focus on and ignored his autonomy in the mix of that. And to that end, I would also be thinking about if there were any co-occurring concerns related to the case. What I mean by that is, If there were some underlying concerns that maybe led to the decision to lock up Ronan in a box in the garage, if he felt like he had difficulty with anger, if it came out that he had something going on with substance use or addiction of some sort, those might all be concerns that, even though he most likely won't be parenting Ronan any longer, those issues could still rear up later on after he's released or even in the time that he's incarcerated. And so that might be something that we assess for and ask about. Were there any other mental health or emotional challenges that might have led to those circumstances being what they were? We might also try to assess if there have been any other concerns resulting from the case. If he's feeling depressed or feeling anxious or any other kinds of emotional instability or difficulties resulting from going through such a public trial, having people say certain things about him, evaluating him from a distance, all of that kind of stuff can really take a toll on a person emotionally and mentally. And so that would definitely be something to screen for, at least be aware of, especially if there are any changes in mood or functioning. And I think the most difficult part about this case, this hypothetical case, and where I think these videos are really helpful, is to recognize that as a counselor, I can still see Tim Ferriter as a whole person. I don't see him just as a sum of the abusive choices and neglectful choices that he made as a parent, but trying to be able to see the potential for change and the potential for a better future for him. And I think in talking through the Ruby Frankie case and also now this case, I received a lot of feedback saying it's hard to imagine someone could have that unconditional positive regard for people who have done such terrible things, especially to kids in particular. But this is kind of where we have to be as counselors, to be able to see that person as someone who has made terrible choices. We're not ignoring that, but who also has the potential for better in the future, the potential for change. And I do think this does get misconstrued where validating someone or seeing them with unconditional positive regard means that I'm condoning what they did or what they're doing wrong. And that's never the case. By seeing him as a whole person, I acknowledge the terrible choices that he made, the ways that he harmed his kids and the way that he's harmed his family. But also that regardless of his circumstance right now, he has the potential to change, that he is more than just those decisions. And I do have to be honest with myself too. If I were his therapist, if I couldn't break out of the mindset of just a child abuser, then I need to recognize that I can't get past that bias. And that may not be necessarily a bad thing that I can't get past that bias, but then I need to have a conversation with him. Hey, regarding the circumstances of this case, I can't get past my own biases, and I think you would be better served seeing someone else. It's not because I hate you as a person or whatever, but it's because I cannot serve you well if I can't get out of my own frame of mind, my own frame of reference to be able to serve you as a therapist. So I think those are some of the ethical issues to keep in mind. Of course, if it were court mandated, having to juggle the dual responsibilities of what the court is looking for, as well as what the client is looking for, as well as just having that unconditional positive regard, being able to examine myself to see if I can break out of my own biases, to be able to serve him as an objective therapist. And if I can't, to be able to have that tough conversation with him, to recognize my own limitations as a person and as a therapist, and be able to serve him best by referring him to somebody who can serve him better. Everyone, thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you for sticking with me through all of these different videos that I've made about the Tim Ferriter case. Just like the Ruby Frankie case, this has turned into a long and winding journey, just examining different areas of mental health and counselor identity and parenting throughout the stories that keep coming out from these cases. So thank you for going on that journey with me. I'm always excited to do more, to learn, to hear different perspectives in the comments that you all contribute. So thank you all for that. Thank you for the way that you interact and build a healthy community around these videos that I create. As always, please like and subscribe. That helps our channel to grow. We also do live streams every Tuesday at 9 p.m. Eastern time, so be sure to tune into those where we have opportunities for Q&A and to provide updates on what we're working on with this channel and how we're growing. So thank you all for watching this video. I'll see you next time.